extraordinary allegation that was put forward by people in Indonesia that they had been paid by Australian officials to, as people smugglers, to take the asylum seekers on board their vessels back to Indonesia. This seemed at the time an extraordinary allegation, and to be honest, when it was made I didn't take it seriously, as there are a lot of allegations in this area, as I'm sure the Minister knows, that are often made which turn out not to be true. The Minister very quickly denied the government having paid any money to people smugglers to take their passengers back to Indonesia, and again, to be honest, to me that made perfect sense. That was last Tuesday, Madam Acting Deputy Speaker, and last Friday we had the Prime Minister make a pretty astounding interview with Neil Mitchell on 3AW, where he seemed to allow the possibility that this may have actually occurred, and in a subsequent press conference later in that day, I think really invited all Australians to believe that this is precisely what occurred. My question, obviously, to the Minister is whether or not this did occur, and whether he stands by the comments that he made originally that this never happened. Comments which made sense because the idea that you would be paying people who belong to a criminal network to undertake behaviour which would, in essence, create something of a pull factor makes no sense at all. Makes no sense that you would send a message to people smugglers that it is possible to come up next to an Australian vessel and there'd be a fair chance that you'll get a wad of cash paid for by Australian taxpayers. This would seem to me to be creating a new business opportunity for people smugglers in the context of a set of circumstances where I do think, in all sincerity, both sides of politics have been working over the last few years to try and remove the business opportunities of people smugglers. So this is a very dangerous development if this is in fact what has occurred, and it's very much in the public interest that we get an answer to this question. Now, I note that what we have heard from the government in response to questions of this kind over the last 48 hours is invoking the operational matters and security questions and a long-held precedent that governments and indeed both sides of politics shouldn't be responding to questions of intelligence matters. That ultimately is not good enough, Acting Madam Deputy Speaker, because that was not invoked at the time that the Minister very clearly gave an answer last week that this did not occur. It was not invoked back then. It seems to me that it's being invoked now with a view to trying to make sure that this question does not need to be answered. I also note this. The government has been busily out there talking to various media outlets and backgrounding them on the operations, in fact, of security agencies, which I've got to say in my mind is utterly appalling that that has been put into the public domain, which has then raised questions about whether or not there was any actions of this kind that occurred when Labor was in office. Of course, we would not answer questions in relation to the activities of our security agencies, and they're not the questions that I'm asking of the government and asking of the Minister this evening. But I would absolutely make this point in another context, Madam Acting Deputy Speaker. There would be security agencies around the world, there would be police organisations around the world which pay informants to infiltrate criminal networks. Now, that is a very different question to one of paying a criminal network to do a particular job. And that's the question that is at hand here in terms of the conduct that occurred last week. If the allegations are true and the Prime Minister is not ruling them out, which of itself seems to us to be a strange message to send to people smugglers, then this government has been paying criminal networks to undertake a job. We need to hear from the Minister now that that did not occur.
Give the call.